Nobody knows how to make money better than the ultra profitable corporations of the world. And when I studied business finance in college, I learned many powerful lessons about money. But what I realized is that 95% of people don't apply these lessons to their daily lives. Even many of my classmates who now work at large banks, investment companies, and insurance agencies are absolutely terrible with their money. Well, I guess some of them are really good at spending their money, but that's about it. But I'm the fireman, and I'm trying to reach financial freedom before I turn 30 years old. So I thought it might be helpful to go through some of the most powerful lessons I learned while studying business finance in college, and how I apply these lessons to my personal finances every single day. The first thing I want to talk about is running your life like a business. This is a super important lesson by itself, but it also sets the foundation for everything else I want to talk about. So let me explain what I even mean by this. Businesses are designed to maximize their value. They produce and sell goods and services, cover their necessary expenses, retain whatever earnings they can, and reinvest that money to grow their business. What's really important is that at the most fundamental level, your personal finances and the finances of a business aren't any different. You also need to earn money, cover your necessary expenses, save whatever you can, and invest that leftover money to continue growing your wealth. But what always surprises me is how few people take this disciplined approach to their own personal finances. I think most people have a general understanding of how a business uses money to grow its value. But most people I know still spend every penny they earn, and that includes the people that studied business finance with me. But instead of spending all of the money that you earn, you can do what a business does to increase your wealth. If you want to increase your wealth, which I think most people do, you really need to be focusing on saving more and investing your money wisely to increase your net worth. Moving on, there's one piece of financial advice that I hear all of the time, which I think is super misleading. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, cash is king, but in reality, this really isn't true. The reason people say cash is king is because cash is the most readily available form of currency. You can't buy things with bonds, stocks, and real estate. You would have to sell those assets to get cash before you could make a purchase. But this leads many people to keep all of their wealth in cash, either sitting in a bank account or, even worse, in Cash App. And this is not a very smart idea. When that money isn't invested, it's just sitting there. It's not doing anything for you. And with inflation as high as it has been recently, that money is actually losing value. In reality, cash isn't king. Cash flow is king. Cash flow is a measure of how much money came in and how much money was spent over a given time period. To increase your wealth, you need positive cash flow, which means you earned more money than you spent. Building positive cash flow is how businesses steadily grow their value, and you should be applying the same lesson to your personal finances. That all sounds great, but to actually know whether your wealth is increasing or decreasing, you need to track everything. I've seen some pretty popular financial influencers say that this is a dumb idea, but I couldn't disagree more. If you don't track your money, it will be extremely difficult to see where you're wasting the most money. Imagine a business that didn't track where its money was going to. That would be a huge red flag. Nobody would invest in a business that couldn't tell you how it spends its money. And each little expense might not seem that significant, but when you aggregate your expenses over a long period of time, you might see some very important patterns that you would have missed otherwise. I even made a whole video where I compared my expenses to the average American, and it blew me away. Despite living in an area that's twice as expensive as the national average, I still only spend about a third as much. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, I just don't know where all of my money is going to. You've got to actually track this and then use that information to change your habits for the better. So after being paid for goods and services and covering the cost of operation, what does a business do with all of the leftover money? Well, it reinvests that money to make even more money. Businesses might do this in a slightly different way than you will personally do this, but the principle is exactly the same. Businesses reinvest that money maybe in better equipment, workforce development, or to acquire other companies. With your personal finances, you can do the exact same thing. You can invest in yourself by learning new skills or earning qualifications. You can lend your money by purchasing bonds. Or you can invest in equity through the stock market or in real estate. I think that this is one of the most important lessons that you can learn. Instead of treating money as if it's just something to spend, treat it like it's something to invest. It is an asset, and you can use it to make yourself even wealthier. But as you increase your wealth, there is one thing to keep in mind. It doesn't actually matter how much money you make. What actually matters is how much you keep. When I was doing financial analysis in college, I remember looking at the financial statements of a massive international consulting company. And despite reporting $50 billion in revenue, it had also managed to lose $2 billion in a year. Some of its competitors had just half of the revenue, but the companies were of the same value. That's because these other companies were much more profitable, and it's profit that matters, not revenue. This actually comes up in my daily life all of the time. Again, I live in a super expensive area, and I'm surrounded by people with crazy high incomes. But given how much money they spend, a lot of them would actually be better off if they earned half as much money but lived in a cheaper area. And this is also why whenever you hear somebody bragging about how they increased their business to X amount of dollars in revenue or they had X sales, you can probably safely ignore them. The only thing that actually matters is how much profit they had, which is almost certainly much, much lower. So it's these business finance lessons that I apply to my personal finances every single day. By using this knowledge, I'm on track to reach financial freedom before I turn 30 years old, which is something that most people can only dream of. I'm extremely grateful that I was able to study business finance in college, and I know that a lot of people don't get the chance to get this formal education. And that's why this YouTube channel exists, to share the financial lessons that I think everybody should learn. And I hope to make more videos like this in the future, so if you haven't already, I would love if you would hit the subscribe button. And consistent across all of my advice is that you need to invest, which is why you need to watch this video next. In that video, I explain how you can become a multimillionaire without even working that hard. Check it out next, and I'll see you next time.